Right, I believe all had a good lunch break. So we have to get few people, right? Shall we hang on for like another 5 minutes to 2 minutes, right? We'll wait until maybe organization team can send a message like, we are about to start. Right, I think we can't wait much longer. We need to start because there are a lot we need to cover. Right. Organization team, like, shall we wait another 5 minutes? We have about like 120. Now we have about 70 people, right? Shall we wait another two minutes? We'll wait for another 2 minutes. So 1:37 we'll start. So just communicate with the team, like, we are ready to start and we are waiting for them to join. Right. Okay, let's start now. Right. So how's your lunch? Good. I believe you had a quite good lunch, and I expect you don't eat a lot, right? So because then your body might say, okay, look, let's take a rest, uh, right? Because while during the online program, that that pretty normal, but let's try to catch up. So now under GMP requirement, so if you can recall everything, like let me go back to the summary format, right? So you talk about the facility, you talk about equipment, you talk about warehouse, you talk about people now, the last one. So this is the basic GMB requirement. You are like, Facility has to have a certain good manufacturing requirement, which you already know right now. Equipment need to have a certain GMP requirement, which is already known by you. And then warehousing, packing, raw material, finished good, you need to have a certain requirement. And now we are trying to cover for the people, right? So let's come and see the people part, right? People. So when you talk about the people, properly trained for the job they reassign. Say, for example, now in a packing line operator in a manufacturing plant, they should know about what are the hazards like chemical, physical, microallergenic hazard they are going to face during the packing operation or they are going to encounter. Like say, for example, if it is a receiving, say stores assistant or QA assistant, they should know about the hazard type of hazard they are going to face during the receiving time. So those are kind of a critical requirement, right? So they need to have a proper training. Like training mean doesn't require theoretical knowledge. Of course, there's a certain amount of theoretical knowledge you require, right? But there's a certain amount of practical exposure you require. So that is the one day. So you imagine like, training also categorized as a kind of a minimum requirement for GMP, right? So depend on the risk. Say, for example, if you are running a pressurization machine, so that person should know about the pressurization theory and everything, because then only he give a kind of a value for it, right? And then same scenario, like we have a people who are coming from a like spice and all cinnamon those industries. So you should know about your customer perspective. Say, for example, if it is a cinnamon, what type of cinnamon, what is the classification? What kind of a like physical hazard it can introduce, right? So those kind of a requirement you need to know, right? Similar with like the milk powder. So what can go wrong with the milk powder? So those basic GMP requirement like humidity, those control, or maybe pasta, right? So those requirement we need to understand, right? And then people must not contribute to contamination of the product. So people should not, like say for example, if you have a person, right, who's having a big beard, right? So I'm like, so there are some religious reason you need to have a beard. So then of course you need to have a beard guard. Your hair has to be covered. You can't have a long nails, right? So you can't have like the rings and all kind of a like additional like extra like what do you call jewelries, right? So if you want to like sometimes people might say, okay, look, I need to wear this kind of a thing. So then you might need to change your industry. You can't stay in a food industry. Say for example, somebody is wearing a ring, and then if you take a sub sample on the particular ring, so then you have a justification, because sometimes as a food industry, we might have this kind of a situation. People might say, okay, look, I need to wear a ring. I need to have this bangle kind of a thing, right? So then better option is without arguing, take like randomly take sub sample from that particular area, or maybe that particular like jewelry that person is wearing. So I'm like, if it is clean, I'm like, he has a point. But if it is not clean, most of the time, like 80-90% are sure it's not clean. Then of course you have evidence to show them, like, look, it can be a contamination. So sometimes like you can't just argue. You have to have like that kind of a like rational method to deal when you deal with your team, right? And then must be well trained on hygiene and safety. Now let me ask one question. How many of you know how to wash your hand properly? How many of you know how to wash your hands? Can I get the feedback? How many of you know how to wash the hands? Tell me. Hand washing, like, okay, this is the technique I'm going to use. How many of you know about it? How many, like, can you raise hands? How many of you can, how many of you know how to wash the hands properly? Okay, one person is there. Two, three. So out of like 5 people. Okay, let's see. Let's see. So, Adi, like in this training program, at least you should know about hand washing, right? So let me. Can you see the YouTube video? Tim, can you see the
Yes,
YouTube video? Right? You
Yes,
can
sir.
see it, right? You can see it, right?
yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Let me run for you. Now, let me come back to my presentation. Uh, do you know that, are you using the same techniques? Is there any additions? The people, 5 people who said like, you know about the hand washing, is the same technique you use? Or is there any difference? Is there any difference? So you think like the same thing? See, the key part is like, inside your fingers. That's one thing, right? Second thing, like, this area. Thank you very much. Manisha said like take the, so this area and then this part, right? So if you take the sample from the people, you can see always there are sobs here, right? And this area, right? And then in this area. So when you using a proper hand wash, you need to use the same techniques. But one thing, did you notice like that lady having a like kind of a jewelry there in her hand? Did you notice that? How many of you have noticed that? Yeah, you noticed that, right? Good, right? So that's wrong. Even though that video, like, you can't, like, if you're getting into the factory, somebody might say, okay, look, she might remove jewelry before she enter the factory. No way. She has to remove all the jewelries and then only come to the washing, hand washing, right? Because then after that, you can't touch anything, right? Unless you are using a gloves, right? So this is the technique. So now at least you know about the technique, right? Hand washing technique. So what I do is I always try to like collect information from the publicly available sources, because then whenever you have concern, you might just check. But only thing, like uh, you just need to check the accuracy of the information, right? You need to have some idea. So now you know how to do hand washing. So when you become an industry professional, first training program you can start with the team is hand washing. See, if you have become auditor, just check how many people know about the hand washing facility. So must be trained in hygiene and safety. So hand washing is the key part. Just take 10 people and ask them to demonstrate them the hand washing techniques. I'm sure like out of 10, 8 people doesn't know how to wash their hands properly, right? So when you start the industry, you can start with them. Like, you don't need to bring people into the classroom, take them to the hand washing station, and then ask them to wash properly and demonstrate them. So that's the first thing. And then must strictly follow all personal hygiene guidelines. So depend on the industry, right? There are high risk industries, like you need to, when you get into the industry, right, you need to have a proper hygiene practices, right? Say, for example, now previously, like there was a factory like under Unilever, there was a called Walls factory. So that is the only factory in Sri Lanka we had ultra hygiene facilities. So whoever comes to the factory, they need to go through a bath, the washing process, and then they need to wear disposable clothes, right? So that is very expensive, but that factory is built in such a way, right? So that wall factory is no more there, but now the factory is there, right? Different people are running now with the kind of good conditions are there, but not ultra hygiene, because ultra hygiene costs a lot. So depend on the product, the food safety requirement, right? You need to set up your facility, right? So depend on the risk factor. Say, for example, if it is a dye product, tea, it's actually a dry product. So your risk assessment as well as the hygiene practices are limited to the dry product, because you are talking about very less moisture product. But if you're talking about the milk, if you're talking about the meat, so those product, of course, you need to have a certain high level of control, right? So these are like, personal. So people can become a contamination source, and sometimes it can become a very dangerous contamination source. Now, like why you need to train. So entire this slide very much focusing on the training part. You need to train, you need to verify, you need to validate whether this training and training effectiveness part, right? So this is the very important. And then personal hygiene practices, we need to worry about, we need to have a system about hand washing procedure. So there should be a display, all equipment has to be there. The lukewarm water has to be there. You need to have a soap and then hand drying. Sometimes people, what they do is they have one towel. I mean, it's not wrong. It's wrong actually, because then it can become like another contamination source. Why? You have a towel, and then like everybody will use that. So either you need to have a disposable papers, tissue papers, or you need to have a hand drying facility, right? And then there's a PP requirement. So depend on the food factory. Now the face mask, the hair cap. So we call personal protective equipment, right? Hair caps, maybe apron or full uniform, or maybe boots, right? So those are the kind of PP requirement. And then restriction on jewelry illness reporting. Say, for example, jewelry, you depend on the industry risk factor. You can have a restriction. And then same time illness. So if I cut my finger, like there should be a process. So people should communicate. Or if I am having a communicable diseases, so there should be a mechanism to communicate that. And then personal hygiene facility and toilet. So this is also crucial, because like sometimes we have experience, people develop factory only considering the production output. Say, for example, like factory will run for a 24/7, and then what they do is like, they will say, okay, if you set up the factory toilet and everything outside, people will go and like, they don't come back quickly. So they set a toilet inside the facility, right? Okay, inside the facility, right? So then like you can't like most of the time when we people will invite us to do the ISO as a consultancy uh, after they set up the factory. So when you go, you have the toilet inside the facility. So then we need to convince them, look, we don't you can't have these toilets and all. So then what their solution is, okay, let us close the door. We are actually not going to use it, keep it under lock and key, but the toilet is inside the factory. Now what do you think, team? You hope you understand the scenario. You set a factory, already built the factory, and then you set up a toilet inside the factory. So when we go and like food safety people go and say, okay, look, you can't have a factory inside the toilet inside the factory. The management said, now we already invested like everything, but we are not going to use it. We are going to make sure like door is closed, put a lock, it's closed. Actually, they are not going to use it. Are you okay with that? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Team, what do you think? I hope you got my question, right? So factory is already built. It's a new build factory. And then somebody said, okay, we need to have a toilet inside. So they put up a toilet also. But then food safety team like you all go there and say, look, we can't have a toilet inside. You need to have a toilet outside. So the management agreed and they will say, okay, look, we are not going to use it. We are going to keep under lock. And they are going to do that. So what do you think? Are you okay with that? What do you think? I need a feedback. I need an answer. What do you think? Minoli, I'll answer to your question now after I get the feedback from the toilet question I'm having. Now, team, what do you think? So you were saying like you're not accepted, right? So any particular reason? Sajini said no. Uh, Uh, Manish said no, close and seal, not acceptable. There can be a risk of microbes. Yeah, I fully agree, right? See, but the issue is like, you're not using that toilet, but it's connect, the drain lines are connected, right? So the microbes, like what you said was, air count can be go up. So only option is you covered, right, from the solid wall, and then maybe you can use the toilet from other side. You can ask them to like, you put another door there, but the entire building has to be fully covered. You can't have an open door. Even like, when you underlook and key mean there's a provision. So there should be a hard rock, wall has to be there. Fully agreed team, right? Now, I got a question from Minoli say, I have a question, sir. In my scenario, alcohol is product with the lower risk of contamination of spoilage due to its low pH and other factors. Does this mean that we do not need to strictly follow the food safety hygiene? Like Minoli, like this say, see, we are not only worried about the microbe, right? So we are worried about another three types of allergen, like the hazard. It can be chemical, it can be physical, it can be allergenic. So these three hazards also there. So when people, if they don't practice proper, basic GMP requirement, even though your product can be microbiologically low risk, right? Microbiologically, it can be low risk. So you don't need to much worried about the microbiological contamination. But what about the chemical? What about the physical? What about the allergenic reaction? So better to go for a basic, at least basic GMP requirement. So that's the requirement. So there are some product, they are not that high risk in terms of microbiological. But of course, there are other risk factors, chemical, physical. So people, I might work in a chemical factory and then come and work in alcohol industry. So there can be a contamination, right? So there can be allergenic reaction, right? So those factors, or maybe physical contamination, right? If I don't wear the hair covers or the beer guards, so then your alcohol can be contaminated with the hair. So the basic GMP, whether it's a high risk, low risk requirement, I'm like, if it is a high risk, you have additional controls, right? If it is a high risk industry, you have additional control. But any food industry or primary packaging industry, you need to adhere to the basic GMP requirement. I hope it's very clear, right? So at least basic GMP requirements has to be there. Depend on the industry, depend on the risk factors, but then depend on the risk category of the product, you can increase the GMP requirement, like, personal hygiene requirement. I hope it's clear to you, right? Right. Let's move on. So now, PP requirement, restriction on jewelry, illness reporting. This is very important. So people should have a culture like saying, if I'm having a issue, a medical case or communicable case, reporting. But then we have a challenge here. Sometimes some organizations using not only your own workforce, they are using contract labors, right? So this is the practical scenario. So in this case studies, we are going to discuss the like practical scenario. So if you're having your own workforce, they have a leave system. So if they are not well, they can work in a different area and then again they get paid. But imagine if you're having a contract labor and they are getting paid only for the work they have done, then even if they have a sickness, like they will continue to work. So they can spread the sickness with the other workforce members, as well as it can be a contamination for the team, for the product as well. So depend on this kind of a situation. We have to be very careful, right? As a QA person, as a food person, we have to have a separate mechanism to know about our employees. So there should be at least supervisor. They should know, not only depend on the person. So there should be an open culture. People should say, okay, look, I am having this kind of a problem, right? Or maybe there should be a proper mechanism for that. And then personal hygiene facilities, toilet has to be there proper way. My question, I think you have given a correct answer. And then staff canteen, designated eating area. So your eating area. So I just mentioned about the walls factory previously. So even in previously walls factory, nobody eat take lunch, the lunch for rice and all. See, imagine the factory, when they set up the factory, they recruit people. They didn't recruit people from Colombo, right? They actually recruit people from the same vicinity area, right? Same, like, surrounding area, they recruit people. So everybody eat rice, right? Lunch. So all of us have, like, had a lot of rice today now. So we eat rice like curry and, like, we used to eat. That's a typical Sri Lankan way. But when they set up the walls factory, they basically, like, change the habit of taking rice during the lunchtime. They convert it into snacks where you don't need to touch, right? You use the forklift and, like, you use the cutleries for it. So you are eliminating touching the food. But our normal practice is we mix rice, vegetable, eat, and when you come back, now just smell your hand and see. Still you are getting the food smell, right? Yeah. So when you smell hand and see, so you are getting the smell. So the industry like ice cream and margarine industry, so they have a fat. What they do with fat, what they can do is, like, they can absorb all the smells. 10th. There are industries. So they want to eliminate that. That's not part of the food safety, but part of the quality. Because when you take ice cream, you started to get, like, Malum Suwada ice cream. Or maybe, like, Karaval Suwada ice cream. You can't get that, right? So even when you keep the ice cream in the food, in the freezer, right? You might get that taint. Sometimes you feel like, this is not good, like, getting different taste, right? Because in the deep freezer, you might keep some other smelly product there. So they go into that extreme, right? Like, people, they change even their eating behavior as well, right? So that's the different thing. So staff canteen, eating area, designated area is separately, right? Where they dispose the product, hygiene area, and then even staff canteen, again, food waste disposal has to be proper, like close encounter, the garbage has to be there, workwear and protective clothing. This is very important. Now I have a question. Workwear and protective clothing. See, imagine now you have a factory and then you will give, like, clothes for employees, and then you ask them to go and wash the clothes. So how do you assure that they are not putting their clothes with other dirty clothes? Or maybe say somebody from their home, there was a sick person, right? Maybe a communicable diseases person. So they might put their cloth with the particular person's cloth, right? Person with the diarrhea, right? So then how do you assure those kind of a thing? Do you have any mechanism for the clothes? Do you have any mechanism? So these are very practical scenarios which we are facing. Do you have any mechanism for that? What do you think? Team, what do you think? Agreed. Yeah. So normally, like, probably like, yeah, if it is a lab coat, it has to be autoclave. But normally, like factory people, what they do is they are not allow people to take. So they basically like, these are BRC requirement, right? Cloth wash inside the factory. But sometimes some factory allow them to do that because of the facility, right? So allow them to do that. So when they allow them to take the clothes and wash at home, then of course they need to give a separate guideline, and then you need to get their concern. You need their signature. You need their signature. Say, okay, look, I read and understand this part. Like, I have to wash separately. So that kind of requirement is there, right? Protective clothing. Better do not give clothes washing for the employees, right? Or maybe yes, agreed. Now then, say you identify a designated laundry, and then give that information for that particular laundry, because sometimes people doesn't like, manufacturing people doesn't want to have like additional burden. So washing laundry is not your core area. Your core area is manufacturing. So maybe you talk to laundry and like have an agreement with them, like, when you do a washing, your only your cloth has to be washed together, right? So those kind of a requirement. And then illness and injury. So if there's illness, if there's injuries, there should be a proper procedure to communicate. And then maybe as per factory ordinance requirement, you need to have a, like, separate, the medical room and facilities has to be there. And then personal cleanliness, you need to monitor. So, like sometimes the GMP people, they will basically check before, like, randomly. There's a checklist, GMP checklist. So they check the nails, condition of the finger, hair condition, all requirements they check under each and every employee. So initially they will start at, high frequency. Say for example, every day they start it. So once you get a kind of a clear picture, they will reduce into every other day, or maybe once a week, so once a month. Or then later on, they do it randomly. So then again, when you do a randomly, if you identify, okay, there's a people are not adhering to the basic requirement, then you identify, okay, people with the nails are like, too many people have issue with the nails. Or maybe there are people who with the jewelries, they found out. So then, of course, what you can do is like, you can basically increase the frequency. So you are playing with your sampling plan, because now end of the day, like, you have 8 hours to work in the factory. There are so many other work. So what you can do is like, you have to put a proper system, and then once you put a system, you need to control it, right? And then personal behavior, this is very important. What do you mean by behavior? See, sometimes people eat like, beetles, right? So then they straw everywhere. So imagine like during the COVID time, there was a such control, but right now it's not. And then sometimes like, the factory environment, like, not your own employees. Maybe you have like, external employees, like say, for example, drivers. So then they used to eat beetle, right? So then they started to split everywhere, right? So that is a bad scenario. So when you have a, like, if you have a good GMP practice, not only your own employees, even visitors, even drivers, they have to have a proper communication. You are not going to spend like a 1 hour training program with the driver, right? Maybe you train your security guards, say, check if you have a beetle, like, you go out, throw it away, wash and come back inside the factory. Otherwise, you are not allowed to come to the factory. So that will be a part of the training. Or maybe you can have a display board and say, okay, if you want to enter into the factory, these are the guidelines, right? This is the wearing, this is the hard hat, this is the coat you have to wear, and then no beetle eating. So all communication has to be in writing. So people cannot say we don't know about it, right? So these are like personal hygiene, and this is the challenging part. You can manage your facility, you can manage your equipment, you can manage your warehouse, but managing people on GMP is the challenging part. So if you have doubt, if you think is not, I'm not giving the correct information, there are a few industry people, you talk to them. So they will basically agree with me. Managing the people on the hygiene is a challenging part. They come up with so many excuses, but we have to do that, right? And then now we are going to do a conduct of initial inspection. Now, team, be careful, right? So maybe if you're at home, go to kitchen, and if your mother or somebody, sister, or they are making a food preparation, just check their personal hygiene, the nails, like, the rings and all kind of a thing, right? But be careful, huh? Because they are not coming from our background. Just take notes. Or maybe if you can remember your industry, packing line operators, or maybe mixing operators, or maybe like, those people, just understand like what are the positives, what are the negatives, right? Or maybe if you can remember your canteen food preparation and the food serving people, just think of them, and like, come up with kind of a initial inspection about the personal hygiene part. Team, is the question clear to you? Team, question clear? Team, are you clear about the question? Team, you're clear? All right, great. Yes, so let's get done 2:15. So you can use the same thing, group WhatsApp, or maybe the chat, both. Team, can I get the feedbacks? So anyone in trouble now? If you try to go to your kitchen and like try to inspect your mother, right? But like we need to learn, right? So just explain her as well. So how was your situation? Anybody has done anything? 5 minutes is not enough. So can I get one or two feedbacks? So this is interesting, right? Personal hygiene. Team, can I get the feedbacks? I need feedback. So this is not that difficult, but I know it's challenging. Can I get one or two feedbacks? Okay. Proper hand washing is required before entering the production area. However, must wear appropriate PPE, especially gloves, masks, and hair covers. Safety shoes are mandatory to prevent sipping. Smoking is strictly prohibited inside the area due to risk of fire. Forklift operation must be wear safety shoes and gloves. This is mandatory. Bringing matches or wearing jewelry is not allowed. There is a checkpoint to ensure compliance with these rules. Separate areas are provided for staff and workers to eat. Agree. So, Minoli, one more thing, like sometimes like we have some idea. Whenever we require, we need to we are trying to wear the gloves, right? But see, imagine now with this dry condition, like the hot condition, and then if your plant is not AC, and if you try to wear a gloves, what will happen? You can see the people inside their gloves, like it's a water, right? Like sweating is there, so that will have additional contamination. So just have a proper assessment whether you require a gloves or not. Oh, you need a clean hand only, then you can adhere to that, right? So I'm agree. So Minoli is that, and Aisha said in desiccated coconut production, personal hygiene is critical. Barrier against salmonella and physical contamination. Understand? Under GMP, worker must follow strict protocol through hazard sensitization, removal of all jewelries, and use of full protective gear, including hairnets, beard nose, and dedicated clean uniforms. Any personnel with illness or uncovered wounds are strictly prohibited from the floor to ensure they are ready to eat product remaining safe for consumption. Yep. So this, these two feedback. I mean, like others can also see they're very very clear, and then you can review, you can monitor this feedback as well, right? So I think personal hygiene part, I think is very clear. And then we even at the audit, we might have some situation because we do training, everything on the personal hygiene, but then when you make a site visit, you can see people with all sort of different things. Like I told you, right? Uh, Maybe your drivers, they are having a beetle and they are inside the plant. Just want to see. So see, these are the things we need to eliminate. Now, the pest control is again a very important part under GMP. Preventive pest control program, physical barriers, screens, seals, doors, use of licensed pest control companies, preventing access, harborage and infections, monitoring and detection, eradication. So pest control, you need to have an agreed licensed pest control partner. You can't if I don't have a qualification, I can't just start my pest control in my factory, right? So I need to have a proper approved person with the license. You can have with the proper pest control agreement. Or otherwise, some organization what they do is they send a person for the similar pest control training program, and then only they will use that person. So there should be a qualification criteria. And then when you do a pest control, right? When you do a pest control, you need to make sure, identify the relevant pests. Now, see, now we have about like 100 people, 94 people. So we are coming from a different area. Somebody coming from area where you have so much of insect. Somebody coming from an area where you have so much of rodent. Or maybe similar area, like depend on the surrounding, you might have a situation, right? So then, so when you develop a pest control plan, you need to communicate this with your pest control team, and then based on that you need to have a plan. Say now, if I ask this question, if you go to a hotel, high end hotel, the environmental friendly open hotel, so there are plenty of open hotels. Your buffet dining area is pretty much open, right? I know, like if I after this saying this, you might have the similar question. Your dining area is open, but your food serving area is controlled. You have a doors, everything. You serve and then you come out. You can dine outside. But when you started to eat in your home, how many flies are coming? So that's a serious trouble for us. But when you started to eating in the resort or whatever the hotel in outside, you don't have flies. Now, what's the secret? What do you think? What's the secret? What's the secret? Hope you got my question, right? So, what do you think? What's the question? What's the secret? What do you think? Let me repeat again, right? There are restaurants, you can eat open air, like not the AC controlled environment. You can serve your food. Foods are basically served under the control environment, but you serve your food, come out, stay in open air, enjoying the natural environment, right? But hardly you don't you find a flies there. But if you started to eat inside your house, in your kitchen or dining area, you can see so much of flies. Right now, what's the problem? How do they there's no flies in the resort hotel, and we have a lot of flies in our kitchen area or dining area. What do you think? Uh, Imasha, I just mentioned, fly killers are be placed around there. Imasha, if you go to a hotel where you dine openly, you can't see a fly catchers. Flycatchers are there inside the kitchen, manufacturing area, but not outside. But it basically destroy the outlook of the hotel. But hardly I have seen flycatchers outside dining area. But inside, of course, kitchen area, yes. Now, what do you think? Ansika, I agree with your point also, like hand cleaning and sanitizing are required before entering into the unit. Also, foot bath. Foot bath, if it is a dry, wet product, right? So you don't put foot bath if it is a dry product. Sometimes, like, we saw even in the tea factory, you are like, it's a dry process, but you have to go through a foot bath and then you are entering into the dry area, which is very wrong, right? So that is one thing. So they maybe use pesticide chemicals for insect. Yeah. Yes, Sajini, that's true, right? Even lot of resort, hotel and all, you can see they have an agreement with the pest controller. They work with them. And then like at night, they do a fumigation, right? All like lavas, whatever the things, all gone. But in our case, what we try to do is like we try to put a fly catcher or like close the doors and maintain. But the harborage point we are not destroying. But the resort, hotel, whoever use this, they identify the harborage point and they destroyed it. So that is very important part, right? So that's why you can eliminate all the flies, insect, right? So same approach you need to have, right? So you identify like depend on, and then there are some seasonal. Now we talk about like during the April, like you have a lot of fruits and flowers, so there will be so much of insects are coming up. So then your pest control plan should be geared to that. And then same time, like whatever the pest, you need to have a understanding record. So I catch this amount of flies, this amount of moth in during this time, and then there are rats are there. So all this information we need to capture. Right. So this is the pest control plant. And then, of course, like, I mentioned, like, if it is a gully, there should be a physical barrier, which from outside, like, the rodents cannot come. Right. So those are kind of a key requirement, monitoring and like, then, of course, is easy monitoring, detection and eradication is immediately you can do if you identify these requirement. Right. Now, what is the current pest control situation in your organization? Do you understand the type of pest? Is it a rat? Is it a cockroach? Is it flies? Is it insect? Those kind of a thing. Before I go to this case study, I'll give one example. You need to go into minor detail. Say, for example, one particular packaging factory. They identify, like, the pest control plan. They covered everything, even exhaust fan. They have a mesh. Even when the exhaust fan not working, the meshes fall down. But during a like certain part of the month, right? Say, for example, April, there's this very small flies, white colors, my white flies. They are coming and contact with the primary packaging because the plastic, they like, they have a static energy. So they can appear in the product. So that will be a serious issue for the customer because like, minor insects are there, right? They die, they stay in the plastic. So when you analyze, you have a like a mesh system is there just to like cover outside, but there are small gap between like the wall and a mesh frame. So this gap is enough for this insect to come in, right? So then we have to have a separate silica system to cover all these things. So you need to go into such detail. So we know like okay, by April this will happen. Now, so before this April, what we did was we basically check everything. So those are the kind of a requirement, those are the kind of information we required from the pest control plan. Now, you have a case study. What is the current pest control situation in your organization? Analyze it. So based on these factors, prevention, the agreements there, license is there, preventive actions are there, is there any harborage infection points there? Do you have a monitoring mechanism or eradication mechanism? Can you all do this? Will take 5 minutes. Team, are you good? Can you all do this? Can you do this? Team, you got the question? Okay, great. Raisuru, thank you. 12:35 will start. 2:35 will start. Team, you have 1 minute. Okay, I'm started to get the feedback. Aisha has mentioned main pests affecting Minori ones, facility are rats, ants, and flies. Yep. Minori, thank you very much. Including ants as a kind of a, like, the pest, because most of the time people does not consider ants, right? So imagine if you have ants inside your product in your export order, you might have a big problem, right? Flies, glue traps are placed in production area, vats and warehouse to control rats with weekly maintenance checklists in place. Agreed. Fly catchers, light traps are also maintained weekly. Entry points are minimized using mesh screen. For ants, good sanitation practice are followed by cleaning spill immediately, sealing entry points, and using approved pest control method when necessary. Sometimes, like, under pest control, what people does is like, the fumigation, right? Sometimes people do a fumigation part. But then again, you need to identify what would be the impact for the fumigation. Sometimes, like, factory, they shut down all the plants, everything, and then they seal, they go for annual fumigation. So it kills everything, right? So that can be another techniques you can use it. That is one thing. Yeah. Then Aisha, the current pest control situation is our managed through a structured, proactive partnership with the external service provider. While routine inspection and monitoring stations are effectively maintained, a critical analysis suggests that our primary challenges remain pest exclusion, specifically addressing structured gaps in high traffic area like loading, docks, and waste disposal zone. To remove beyond reactive cycle of treatment, we must integrate better housekeeping discipline around staff and invest in physical building repairs to ensure truly residents pest-free environment. Yeah. So pests, like, imagine if you, I mean, like, people who have replied, like, Aisha and Minori, it was fantastic, really good. The feedback is really good. So if you can support these tasks with the checklist, right, implementation checklist, so that will basically help you to improve your pest control system, because pests is a serious problem, right? Any industry, right? So now let's move on from the pest control, product information and consumer awareness. So this is even under TS 22000 GMP requirements, comes under GMP requirement. So earlier I told you, right, in this program, we are going to cover the traditional GMP requirement as well. So traditional GMP is like, you talk about your facility, you talk about equipment, you talk about warehouse, you talk about people, and then you talk about cleaning and sanitation of all four categories. That's a traditional GMP. But when it's come to the advanced version, the technical standard TS 22000, they are started to talk about this part: product information and consumer awareness, product labeling, allergen information, traceability. So these are very important. So these are also considered as a GMP, product labeling. In Sri Lanka, there was a label act. Right. According to the Label Act, there are certain guidelines were given. Your production date, expiry dates, batch numbers, and then maybe sugar content, and maybe in all three local language, or maybe ingredients, or product labeling adhering to the legal requirement is basic GMP requirement. And then allergen. Right. So what do you mean by allergen? Like, if you check WHO guideline, there are certain number of allergens are there. So if those allergens are comes under your product, of course you need to mention, right? So these are like, allergens products are there. So if you have a proper ingredient list, then of course that will be a communication mechanism for the allergen, right? And then there are some local regional allergens. Say for example, now if you go for a WHO guideline, the allergen list, you don't get pineapple as allergen. But in Sri Lanka, there are few people are like allergenic to the pineapple. So those are considered as a kind of a local allergen, right? Like, so those are, we need to communicate with that. And then traceability. See, there are two type of traceabilities we need to know. One is backward, other one is forward. What do you mean by backward? What do you mean by forward? Right? So backward traceability means like, if somebody give you a number, like, okay, my production date is 12th March 2025, and my like shelf life is 2 years. Say for example, we'll say tea, flavored tea. So, or maybe batch number is there like ABC 123, whatever. So then, whatever the mechanism, I should be able to trace back, goes up to my supplier. Say for example, I have a tea pack. In this tea pack, in the blend done on particular day, this blend, there are 3 plantations tea goes into that particular blend, right? So that I need that information. Say for example, if you are manufacturing alcohol, so beverage product, like this bottle, production date is this, and then this product, the VAT number is this, blending unit is this, right? So you can go up to a supply level, and primary packaging bottle we got from either China or we from local supply. So we should be able to identify that. Say for example, meal packet or maybe pasta. So when you get the batch number or the production date or expiry date, you should be able to identify what is up to a supplier, raw material supplier, pasta or a milk product, or maybe the cinnamon or whatever the product, right? So you should be able to identify who handled that, who packed this, and what is the supply, or where did you buy this product. So that kind of a backward traceability has to be there. And second thing, we call forward traceability. What do you mean by forward traceability? Mean after you dispatch your product. Say for example, I have 20 cases, cinnamon product, or maybe milk product, or maybe alcohol 20 cases. So I give to my Colombo distributor, and then he distribute other suburb. So if I want to get information, how many are remaining at the Colombo distributor, how many are remaining at the Goa distributor, how many are remaining at the Ampara distributor, that information I should get fast. Say this particular batch number ABC 123, and I dispose 100 cases, whatever the product. So then there are with maybe 50 distributors. So out of 50, this particular batch number goes to 10 distributors. So how fast I can get that information? How many products are remaining at the distributor point, right? But then beyond distributor point, the shops, consumers, you can't do this forward traceability. Why? Because you don't know, shops, distributor doesn't keep a track on the shops he distribute the product into the retail market. And then retailer doesn't keep track on the product you keep sell for the market, right? For the consumers. Say, for example, if you want to buy a milk packet, retailer doesn't ask where did you come from, what is your ID number, address and all, right? Like they don't ask that information. Right. But if it is a vehicle and all, of course they have, but milk, biscuit or cinnamon, whatever the food product, they don't ask that information. So your forward traceability stop at your distributor points. Now, what are you going to do if there's a contamination, right? You need to communicate with the customer. You have no option. You can't do a silent record. Only thing what you can do is you can put an advertisement, so that will challenge your brand name, right? Of course you have no option because you need to protect the people. That's a part of the agreement of the business, right? So you need to publicly put advertisements and saying, okay, look, this particular batch number, if you purchase, don't consume, return to the nearest distributor, right? That's the only thing. And then and get a replacement, or return to the nearest shop and get a replacement. So that's the only thing you can do. So this forward traceability is very important. And then when you do audit as well under GMP TS 22000, we need to check that as well, right? So this is a challenging area. So, and especially when you go for a consultancy projects and all. So I'm sharing some information with you as well. So if you can see a good backward traceability in your organization, so like finished goods, who cleared, QA reports are there, and then blending reports are there, mixing reports are there, raw material weighing reports are there, who approved in process informations are there, right? So if you have all this information up to a supplier, we know they have a good quality management system, because without that documentation part, you can't show this information. Say, for example, if you are like, one man show, like, if you are manufacturing a food product and if you don't keep any record, right? If there's a customer complaint, you don't know like from which product, which raw material, which blend you have taken. Because after 1 year, you can't remember everything. So only thing like if somebody complain, you maybe have a storage sample. You check the storage sample and then you go back and check the records. Then you have information. Normally the thumb rule is like, you need to keep at least the records until product go complete is expiry date. That's the thumb rule. Unless there are organization deviation, that's it is a minimum, right? Oh, otherwise legal requirement. Say sometimes there are legal requirement. Even after you complete, you can't destroy the data sheets. But other than that, the basic minimum thumb rule is, so if your product shelf life is 2 years, you have to keep record for 2 years. If shelf life is 6 months, you have to keep record minimum at least 6 months. Because if somebody make a complaint, you should be able to go back and check it, right? So this is the traceability part, right? Product information, consumer awareness. So consumer awareness is a legal and then allergen information. Now, I will ask one question. Say that now hotels, resort, right? There are people, lot of people are coming. So their interaction is not with the chef, their interaction with the front office. So if you go to a hotel, you don't go to the kitchen and talk to chef and say, okay, look, I need this kind of thing. I'm having allergen on the prawns and or gluten or anything. You are not going to talk to the chef. So you are basically communicating uh with the reception. So what do you think their internal mechanism? What do you think their internal mechanism? Any idea? I don't think anybody, none of you are from hotel industry, right? See, I'm taking hotel as a best example because see, in the hotel industry, you are in the food industry. So if you are manufacturing a milk product, so you can keep the milk product for like 1 week, 4 days, get a microbiological lab clearance, and then you can release the product into the market if it is okay, because you can keep the 4 days. But the hotel industry, when you manufacture, you straight away give it to your consumer, and then your consumer will be your test piece. So your GMP, everything has to be spot on. Right. Now, my question. So, if I'm allergic to something, if I'm going to a hotel, or maybe if you are in an allergic situation, say glutamine or whatever, the prawns, whatever you say, I'm allergic for this. So, what do you think about their internal communication system? Because your interaction limited to the reception or the front office, but your food, everything is manufactured by the kitchen. Unless like, if you go to a buffet, you select your own, that's fine. But say you are ordering, like, you ask for a room service. Now, what do you think? What do you think? What would be their control system? Do you have any idea? Do they have a mechanism to control it? What do you think? What do you think, team? Do you think like there should be a communication mechanism? Yes, there should be a communication. What do you think their communication? What do you think their communication? So nobody has some experience on that part, right? Okay, let me explain because they have a morning meeting, right? They have a morning meeting. So in the morning meeting, basically like the front office, they will communicate with the chef and then with the special note, they will give like room number, this particular person having allergies for this kind of scenarios. So that communication will run like the person is there for like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 days, whatever the numbers days, they will communicate like room 201, whatever this person having allergies for like gluten allergens was there. So don't, if you even eat the bread, you have to make sure there's no gluten. So these particular requirements are there, right? So this communication is very important, especially for the allergen. And then the product, allergen material, you can't store with other material, right? That is another thing on the warehousing part under GMP. So your allergen, like, declared allergen product has to store in a separate location, maybe under lock and key. That's another requirement, right? Let's move on. Then the rework. Any industries have a rework, right? So you need to have a clear procedure for reworking food. Rework must not comprise safety or agility, storage, identification, and traceability. Rework usage. So let me take one example of the rework. See, now everybody knows the tea bag, right? You know about the tea bag. So when you want to have a tea, now within few minutes we are going to have a tea, right? So when you go for a tea, right? Like the tea bag. Uh, Sometimes due to some issue, like you reject certain amount of tea bags. So then what they do is like that's an immediate rework. They have a separate person with the same line. They will tear it up, open it, and then take the tea out and then put it back to the machine. Now remember this, like listen carefully, right? So tea packaging machine, like your tea bag packaging machine is there, right? When you do a tea packaging machine, there can be some tea got rejected due to certain reason, right? Don't worry about the reason. So I mean, like, not due to a food safety, maybe quality reason. So then they keep another person with all the PPs, everything. The person's job is to tear it up, open the tea bag, right? And then remove the tea bag, the packing material, but you take the tea out and put it back to the machine. What do you think the most critical hazard can introduce in this situation? What is the critical hazard in this step? Tim, what do you think? What is the most critical hazard? You are tearing the tea bag off, take the tea out, and you remove the tea bag, the label, whatever, all these things, right? But you are taking the tea and then you are putting reintroducing, because that's the tea is the most expensive part, right? So you are reintroducing that tea into the machine, into the hopper, right? Now what do you do? Say for example, now imagine you identify like alcohol. There's a certain issue with like there's the filling machine, like it's not filling properly. So nothing to do with food safety. So you have to fill like 750 ml, but you identify like it's not filling 750. It is like 650 kind of a thing. You can easily see. So what you do is like you stop and then you try to reintroduce the same bottle, right? So similar scenario. Milk packet, like you identify the packet weight is not there, so you cut it down and then you try to reintroduce the milk. I don't know whether milk you can do that part, but of course tea we do, right? Tea, of course we do. So what do you think? What is the hazard? The critical hazard it can introduce to the production line if you do that tea production open. Yeah, so there are like microbiological, because it's inside the plant, and person who are handling with all like PPs are all there. So face mask here and like hand sanitizer, all this there. So do you think again still microbe can be there? Prabhavi, I think like you are spot on, right? Uh, Part of the tea bag mixing with tea. Yeah, that's a physical hazard. I didn't see this one first, right? Traceability, manually traceability can be there, but microbiological agreed, yes. But the main part is the part of the tea bag mixing with the tea. See, I'm tearing off. Sometimes some tea bag you can see there was a staple pins were there, right? So if you don't go through a filtering system, right? Say microbiological traceability issues can be there. But if I change the concept, if I say, okay, I'm going to keep all the rejected sample, and then maybe later on I'll try to introduce. Then, of course, microbial contamination, moisture absorption, traceability issues. Because, like, I'm keeping the sample and then I'm going to introduce into the next batch, maybe after 1 week time. But right now, the issue is Prabhavi, what Prabhavi said was part of the tea bag mixing with tea. See, your string can be there, like your label can be part of it, or maybe when you tear it off, maybe tea bag particles can go, or maybe sometimes, like, some tea bag machine, you have the staples, right? Staple pins. So staple pin can be part of it. So those are the kind of like, the hazard it can introduce to the ties, right? So this hazard can be like, physical hazard and part of the tea bag. Right. So this physical hazard, part of the tea bag. So agreed. Now you know about this part, right? So rework, any industry you have a rework. Now, in your in even in our home we have a rework, right? Sometimes, like, food we kept in a freezer, fridge, and then we started consuming the next day, right? So rework has, like, has a bigger impact. Even in the hotel industry they have a bigger impact. And I don't know about the milk industry. We don't use, like, we don't like, after we pack, we don't, like, cut, and, like, we are not using it because it's a high risk product, right? So we are maybe diluting. I think, like, friend can uh, clarify that. She's not there, right? So maybe in the milk industry we are not reusing actually. uh, we are basically, like, discarding. Aska is not there, right? So we are actually discarding it. We are not taking it. But tea, black tea, and, like, low risk product, we are using. Or maybe, like, in the margarine industry, and, like, what we do is, like, we downgrade it. Like, say for example, if it is margarine, if there's a rejection, then there will be a oil portion. We will be basically using that oil into manufacturing soap or whatever other product, right? So again, it doesn't go into a margarine, right? So always you are at a losing it, right? Now, 3 o'clock. So let's take uh, 3 minute, 15 minutes tea break, and then we'll come back sharp 3:15. So there are very interesting part you need to discuss. The vulnerability, threat assessment, we are going to touch upon those areas as well. Yep, tea break. So let's take a tea break and come back at 3:15. Right. I think you had a break. So we are come to the final session now. So we covered a lot of GMP requirements, which is more than the traditional GMP requirements. So basically, we try to cover the GMP requirement using TS 22000. That is the most advanced GMP requirement, which is basically used by the FSSC and BRC standard, right? So now, then we talk about the rework part. Now, what about the product recall procedure? Under TS 22000, the basic GMP requirement, product recall procedure has to be there. So what do you mean by product recall? See, if something like, all HACCP, ISO, GMP, BRC system, basically we develop uh, to make sure the consumers are not getting affected due to chemical, physical, microallergenic. So you build your the facility, you set up build your equipment, purchase equipment as per GMP requirement, and then you make sure your warehouse stores everything as per the requirement, and then you maintain your people, the practices, and then you maintain cleaning and hygiene practices, right? So just make sure your product are not contaminated with chemical, physical, microalgae issues. But if something goes wrong, again we need to have a system. This is part of the emergency system as well, right? Now, recall rework procedure, right? If you see some good, very rarely we can see this recall rework system in food industry. But if you see in the vehicle industry, you identify even in Toyota. Now, very recently, the vehicles they mentioned there was an issue with the left hand side, what do you call the damage system, some system there was an issue. So they they asked the particular owners to come and replace it free of charge. So that's a good system because you have a recall system, right? But again, when you go for a food GMP requirement, you need to have this recall system. So we need to have a recall plan. To have a proper recall system, you need to have the traceability. If you don't have a proper traceability, of course, you're not going to get a good system, right? So you need to have a good backward traceability. You need to have a good forward traceability, and this traceability has to have a communication. Say, for example, now I need to say, for example, say I'm manufacturing say fruit juice. Some fruit juice products I'm manufacturing using natural fruit juice, right? And then I have say in Sri Lanka, I have about 50 distributors. So I'm running the manufacturing plant. I manufacture. So there's a sales department and then there's a supply chain department, right? So sales department basically go and talk to the distributors and then they agreed on a volume. They will say, okay, I need 10 case, 20 case, 100 case, whatever distributor. So then supply chain department, they distribute it, right? So the communication between the manufacturing team and the distributors are very limited. Why? Because the communication done on behalf of distributor, distributor basically communicate their volumes to the sales team, and the sales team communicate to the manufacturing, the planning team. So that's the communication. You don't have direct contacts with the distribution team. Now, in the case of recall, you have a time limitation. You can't just talk to the sales and get the information and communicate to the distribution. So directly you need to go talk to distributor. Imagine your distributors are not aware about the recall system, right? They have no idea about the food safety or recall requirement. So the moment you say, okay, call the distributor and ask look, do you have ABC 1, 2, 3 product? How many products are there? So then definitely ask why you need this information? These are real scenarios. So then you say, okay, look, I need this information for recall. So then they will ask why you need to do a recall? No, it's a mock recall. We need to do study. So then these people will get really scared and they think like, something really wrong with the product. That's why they try to bring it back, recall it, bring it back. Actually, we are not physically bringing back the product, right? So we are actually like, just to take the stock count. What is the available count? So then when it's come to a recall, we say, okay, after we dispose the product for 1 week, this is the percentage. Like we say 30%, 40%, 50% products are remaining. Because like, we don't want product to remain, right? Like we want product to sell. So we'll say, okay, 20%, 30%. So if it is a less 20, 30%, our risk factors are very high because if in the case of recall, we need to go for a public recall, right? Because only 10% is product available. If it is 30, 40, or maybe 60%, then something wrong with your marketing, right? So always we need to check this part, right? So, but now we are not going to do the marketing part, but we are worried about like in the communication. So when if you are setting a like ISO 22, FSA, whatever the system under GMP requirement, you need to communicate this requirement with all the distributor, not at the point of recall, mock recall, right? Not at the point of mock recall. You have we call it silence recall. You need to have a training program. So when you have a distributor meeting, like what basically do is like, you can't bring all the distributors together, but whenever you have a distributor conference or whatever, we ask for like, 45 one hour time from the distributor, from the sales team. And then during that time we communicate all the food safety requirement, we communicate all the recall requirement. So then you already communicated. And then like, even sometimes like, when you have an interference, like, QA team, QA can act as a kind of a bridge. So they will basically talk to the distributors and in case of situations and all, like, so that link open has to be there, because in any good organization, not only sales team, the quality assurance teams, or maybe like some of the production or QA team should have some interference with the distribution team, right? So then your recall can be easy. So recall, the mock recall, right? So according to the GMP requirement, as per TS 22,000, you need to have a evidence of the mock recall, right? So evidence mean like, you decide, okay, this is the product, this is the batch number, and then you do a recall. And then you identify like how soon you can get this information from the distributor. Say you have 50 distributors. Within 1 day, like how many distributors will give the information? Maybe like, under BRC, there are time limitation, maybe 8 hours, 6 hours, because recall you can't take days, right? So how many information you have? Like, what is the amount of product? Like say you dispose 100 carton. So out of 100 cartons, how many cartons are available under distributor? So only 30, right? So another 70 already gone, right? So those information you collate, and then you have a meeting with the top management team in the organization. So that is we call recall. So recall has to be there. So when you conduct the recall, maybe head of sales, the quality assurance team, the production team, procurement, like all team will be there. So this is a very interesting study, right? So your forward traceability will test here. So when you go for TS standards, the GMP requirement, you need to do a mock recall. Now tell me, is there anyone who has experience in the mock recall? Do you have any experience in the mock recall? Anybody who has experience in the mock recall? Nobody, right? Is there anyone? Navin, you have experience? Is there anyone who has experience in the mock recall? Nobody, right? Okay. So I believe like, the undergrads definitely like, when you go through the study, but you don't get, but I've just tried to check with the people who from the industry. Right. So best thing, if you have a chance to get the experience in the mock recall, get that experience. That is very valuable experience, because when you get into the food safety, food industry, if you can conduct the mock recall, that will be a next level skill, right? So you need to get, but it's a mock recall, right? So if you are happen to take a actual recall, you guys will be in a very pressurized situation, right? The recall, that will be like, last thing you want, right? But at least once a year, you try to get a mock recall, right? Right. So this mock recall is a very important part, right? So nobody has experience in mock recall, but now team, you know, like there's a thing called mock recall. So try to get this experience as well. Now, communication, traceability has to be there in the mock recall. Now, uh, one thing, like, you know, I think you don't have experience to do this, right? Recall procedure. Say, I'll take one example. I'll give one example for this. Because if you have some experience, you should be able to say, for example, I'll manufacture, we'll say one product, um, we'll say one, like, you know, what is the product you would prefer? We'll say yogurt. I'm manufacturing a yogurt. So then when you identify a set of yogurt, you say, okay, expiry date is like say this, and then manufacture date is batch number, we'll say B12. So batch number is B12. So like, you know, I have, we'll say 20 distributors. I distribute. So I manufacture like, you know, 1,000 cases. So this 1,000 cases I have distributed through the supply chain to other distributors. Right now, this was done this week Monday. So maybe Monday is what? Dispatch was done on this right this Monday, right? So dispatch was done on Monday, right? So this Monday. So now we are going to do a recall. So what we do is like, you know, we gather the QA manager, production manager.
Workshop. Your enthusiasm and engagement have made this session truly productive
Samadhi,
and
your
insightful.
mic is on. Samadhi, your mic is on. All right, okay. Right. So then basically like, you know, you basically try to check the recall part, right? So you bring QA manager, QA director, who are the senior team, and then at that particular point, you start. All information has to be documented, right? Say out of all 20 distributors, you started to send emails because we need information on emails, right? The information has to be there. That's the fastest way. So you communicate saying, okay, look, batch number B12, please provide me the information, the remaining number of cases. Say, for example, distributor one, say Galgamu or whatever, like, you know, he already purchased 100 cases. So now we ask, like, you purchase 100 cases, what is the remaining number of cases under batch number B12? Right? So you send the email and you followed up with the call because you need to get this information fast. Right? Sometimes if you don't communicate, people like stores people at the distributor point, they might not give you the information. So that's the challenging part, right? So you do that. So then end of the day, after 6-7 hours, you collect all information from all the distributors. So you identify the timing, you identify the amount of volume. So out of 1,000, how many cases are available after 1 week? So you do a report and then present to the top management. So this will be a mock recall. You are not bringing any product back to your factory, right? You are not going to bring any product back to your back to your factory, right? You are not going to like, you know, bringing any product into the factory, but you try to collect only the information. So that is what we call mock recall. Right. So this is a like, you know, interesting challenging study. So try to do as much as mock recall, but don't go for a the actual recall because that will be a kind of a risk for your job. Right. So I didn't want to do a mock recall study because you don't have experience. Now, product transport. This is very important. This area, you know, the vehicle hygiene, temperature monitoring during transport, prevention of contamination. This is part of the key GMP because when you analyze, when you check some product, like say for example, in the factory, you manufactured, you maintain control environment, and then your product, you check your product quality, right? The finished product, the packaging quality, everything you check, and then only you dispose that product to the transporter. So when the transporter use that product, there can be another lot of defects during the transportation where they handle. If you can see some distribution point in the factory, like factory operators very carefully handle the boxes. But when you go to the transport, the lorry, the way they unload the product, they just throw it. So then there can be a lot of damage, right? If there's a damage, imagine the oily product. If there's a damage, there can be oil tint. So then people won't buy it. And then, of course, there can be a microbiological contamination because products are damaged, right? Imagine if it is a milk product, if they throw, if the pack bursts, right, the milk will be everywhere. So not only the damaged pack, other pack also will get contaminated, right? You can't wipe it and clean it, right? So those kind of a thing, like, during the transport. And then even if the vehicle is not in a good condition, if vehicle is damaged during the wet season, like rainy season, if the vehicle started to get wet, so water leakage, or maybe a damage, or maybe not properly clean, if there's a soil, if there's a smell, so those can be part of the problem, right? Depend on the product category, right? So you need to prevent cross contamination. Sometimes some, people, for a cost saving mechanism, say they take mixed load. Unless if you don't have a proper stain test and done, you can't take mixed load, right? Like, say for example, if you are taking a margarine and the chemical, or margarine and some perfume, what will happen? So margarine started to get the perfume smell, right? Sometimes some people, what they do is, even if you want to maintain a cooler freezer trucks, and due to diesel issues and all, right, they turn off the cooler. Now what are you going to do? So your product, not the transport is responsible. End of the day, manufacturer is responsible. So as a manufacturer, you are going to be a part of the manufacturing organization, right? As a manufacturer, you need to make sure even your transportation is properly managed. And then when it's come to, you send the product from your factory to a distributor, right? And from that distributor, he will use another set of lorries to transport to the shops, right? You have a supermarket chain, you have the general trade. So you are giving those products. So then the people, general public, will buy product from those areas. So you have to assure all this supply chain, the vehicles condition is quite good. It's not easy, right? So you think, the management of factory is difficult. No, because within the factory you have a full control, but outside the factory you don't have that amount of control, right? So this is the challenging part, right? So hygiene requirement, all requirements has to be maintained, right? So this is the challenging part we are going to do. So vehicle hygiene checklist. So when you bring a vehicle to the organization, you need to check the vehicle condition, right? Then only if it is approved, only you allow them to put the load. And then temperature. Now we have a challenge. Say for example, your product need to transit through a cold chain. So freezer truck has to be used. But how do you know, the freezer truck is maintaining their temperature throughout the journey? Imagine, your factory is in Colombo and you need to send product into a Jaffna. So it will be taking long hours, maybe 6-7 hours a drive. Right. So if they can save some diesel, if they turn on the compressor in the chiller room, so how do you assure that part? Any idea? How do you assure that part? How do you assure that part? Vehicle transportation company. How do you assure this? How do you assure this transportation thing? So you have agreed. You can use a data logger, you are spot on. We can Chaturanga, right? Data loggers. So sometimes, you put data loggers without informing to the transporter. And then we using the GPS techniques, and you can get the online data. Or otherwise, you can use the data logger. You once the vehicle go to the destination, take the logger, take the chip, and you can get the temperature reading. And then right now, what has happened, in the freezer and all, uh, now we, using GPS technology, we identify, if the temperature is, you have to maintain below 10, right? So if moment it exceed 10, message go to the distributor and the relevant operation managers, right? But then if they are not taken any action after that, maybe it is exceed 12, it goes to the customer. Right. So you can automate. So automatically there. So okay, this particular distributor from say Ampara distributor, he is not actually maintaining the temperature, right? Otherwise, you have to physically visit there and then only check. But here with the technology, you can use that. So even lorry, you can have a data logger, temperature, you can do that, right? So all requirement you can basically cover, right? Right. So now let's move on. The measurement and prevention of contamination. So why we actually develop this the requirement? Mainly we are focusing on four hazards. So all GMPs, your facility, your equipment, the people, warehouse, and then cleaning sanitation. They try to minimize or cut it down the micro, allergen, physical, chemical contamination. Even hazard, we try to cover all these requirements, right? So these are the basic requirements we covered. And then finally, the cleaning and disinfection. So I'm going back to the same thing, right? So you talk about four areas. Under these four areas, we need to make sure cleaning and disinfection. During the course of its use, processing equipment gets soiled with product residues. Agreed. Even if you are cooking in the kitchen, your processing equipment, the plates, everything is a processing equipment. It gets soiled with the product residues. So there should be a cleaning mechanism. Physical movement of human air, whether it's bring and dust, the dirt and microorganisms which are disposed on floor, equipment, stores, material. So physical movement, it of course bringing those disinfection, right? So this is we agree. Now, cleaning and disinfection are an integral part of the process of manufacturing, should never be considered an end of shift close or done superficially or hurriedly, because probably the most important thing you will ever do. Say, for example, if you don't wash your hand properly, that can create a serious impact. So I'll give one example. If you can remember, we discussed about virgin coconut oil. So we know, like other coconut oil, virgin coconut oil has a other coconut oil has a killing step. But virgin coconut oil, it doesn't have a killing step, right? So what it does, you have to make sure the GMP requirements has to be covered perfectly. Then only you make sure you're not getting any contamination, right? So now imagine people who come to the virgin plant without having proper GMP and help people to sort out the hygiene area. So if you can remember, in Sri Lanka, there was a time, there was a big demand for virgin coconut oil because of the health concern and all, right? People were really concerned about the virgin coconut oil, and there was a big demand. So everybody started to set up a manufacturing plant, virgin coconut oil manufacturing plant. But most of the plants have been closed down. Why? Main reason is, when you pack the product, it has to be transparent product, the white color, colorless product. And when you pack the product quality, everything is quite okay. Remember the virgin, you don't have a killing step. You are not heating, right? And then when you complete the product, so your product is quite okay, QA approved, sample sent to the relevant countries. So sent through the ship, basically use a container, and then it might take 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes more than that. So when you take 1 to 2 weeks, and these are not temperature control product, ambient product. When you go through the normal temperature, what will happen to them? Of course, there was a fungus, spores are there, so it started to grow. So when you go to the destination, when they take the product, you can see the fungus inside the plant, right? That's a challenging. So then the entire product got returned. right? So that is where the GMP is mainly required, right? So this is part. So the cleaning is very important. Like, even if you are getting to the plant several times, you have to go through a proper cleaning process. So that's why cleaning is very important. Even like, if you are using a machine, right? Sometimes we use CIP. CIP means cleaning in place, right? So you use like, hot water, detergent, wash, whatever you use it. But sometimes like, when you have a machine, you have like, connection. So when you do a CIP, the connections are not clean. So like, depend on the product risk factors, the factories, sometimes they dismantle entire connection and then they clean it. So it makes sure like, even the grooves and all in the connections are cleaned properly. Sometimes like, sometimes some industries like, especially like, manufacturing, the what do you call, the drink manufacturer, carbonated or non-carbonated, you use connectors, right? So when you use the connectors, when you do the CIP, we need to make sure all the connectors are there before the CIP, and where you keep the connectors, loading and unloading. So those requirements are there, right? So these are like, very critical requirement, very important requirement. So each and every cleaning has to be there, cleaning checklist has to be there. You need to maintain that, right? So cleaning and sanitation, when you do, we have to make sure cleaning and sanitation agents and tools. So we need to specify like, even if you are cleaning the kitchen, right? You need to specify, okay, kitchen cleaning broom is this. You are not going to use that broom in for something else. What do you mean by something else? So imagine if you are using the same agent to clean your toilet, what will happen? Now I know, like, in your scenario, nobody is going to use the toilet into a kitchen, right? You have a separate thing. But what about other facilities? Maybe you are outsourcing your cleaning, right? So they might use the same thing, right? So they might use the same broom, same like, washing equipment to wash the toilet and then come back and like, clean your kitchen as well, or maybe manufacturing facilities. So as a food industry people, you need to be careful about it because they are introducing unwanted microbes into your production plant. So normally what they do is like, people, they identify one particular location where you keep all the cleaning equipments, cleaning utensils, and then that are not allowed to take outside. That is very important, right? But if it is like, a home, we have to be very careful. So I'm taking some example because most of you are from like, undergrads and all, right? Cleaning and sanitation program has to be there. Say CIP program. What is the temperature? What is the concentration of detergent, right? So CIP, we basically maintain temperature controls, and then finally you check whether the proper cleaning has to be done. Like, normally in depend on the risk factors, if it is a high risk product, what they do is after cleaning, they take the water sample, soap sample, and then microbe team, they will analyze it. So the production team will basically go through it, but they will analyze and check whether the cleaning is properly done. So you verify, you validate it, right? So then monitoring and sanitation effectiveness, of course, you need to monitor. So these are kind of a requirement, right? And then this is the case study we are going to do now. So I think we have enough time. Let's do this case study now, team. You can pick one. You don't need to do all. You can identify what area. Like, if you select your kitchen, maybe facility. What is the cleaning procedure for kitchen? Or maybe your organization packing line, production. Identify one particular area. Or maybe you identify equipment, one equipment. You can say, okay, my rice cooker. So how do you clean it? Or maybe industry, you can identify one equipment, or maybe warehouse, or maybe personal. How do you do the proper cleaning process? So can you just take 5 minutes and develop this cleaning process? So maybe you can jot it down. Facility, I will do like, roof cleaning every 6 months, and then tabletop cleaning every day after the production, after cooking. And underneath the tabletop, say what we do is like, when your tabletop can be fine, it's good. But when you check underneath the tabletop, you can see a lot of dirt. So it can be a physical as well as microbial. Right. So you identify and the floor cleaning after every. So just jot it down. What is your cleaning process? Right? Steve, can you do this? Team, can you do this? Cleaning checklist part, can you do this? Are we good? I know it's hot, it's tired today, but let's finish this in a proper way. Yeah, can you do this? Team, are you good? Team, are we good? Are you capable of doing this part? The final case studies. Yeah. I'm not getting any feedback. Team, let's finish off this. So are you capable of identifying the cleaning checklist, cleaning procedure for you? Yes. Let's start this. So now it's 346, 351. So you can use the same mechanism. Right. So I didn't get any feedback yet. Is it difficult? Anybody try this? So this will be a like last part. So if you develop a good checklist, a good procedure for cleaning, right? Calling all the legal, the GMP requirements. So that will be very easy because I'm getting some feedback. Let's see. Even you can use both chats. Question is like very simple, right? So you have like cleaning system like agent different areas like cleaning programs. So depend on like facility, depend on equipment, warehouse, personnel. So you can develop that part, right? So these are the kind of a basic GMP requirement. So let's see at least get one feedback. Am I not getting any feedback? So all you look like tired, right? So even if you don't mind, like I don't mind, like the chat will be available. So if you can just share with me those information, I can just, like check and give you feedback. So this is very important part because you need to have a cleaning procedure, cleaning checklist, evidence, verification, validation under facility, equipment, warehouse, and personnel, right? So if you have this only like say for example, you have a cleaning procedure, you like you use the equipment, and then after cleaning only you have to make sure that equipment is again can be reused for new production, right? So somebody has to give assurance, otherwise it will contaminate. So now imagine the shops nearby, like food manufacturing facility nearby, like we are buying product from outside, right? So do you think like they do a proper cleaning? So that's a challenging part, right? So that is one thing. So and then there are, I told you, like, if time permits, we are going to talk about two things. One is food defense and the biovigilance and bioterrorism. So this is the final phase we are going to do. So I think like we have about another 10 minutes, so let's discuss this. So what do you mean by like, food defense? So food defense mean initially also like, when I asked this question, right? So this is like, this is go beyond the basic like, food GMP requirement. So this is only under TS 22,000 requirement, right? PRP requirement. See, somebody purposely try to do something. Say, for example, my example, the cut, like, accidentally it can fall into the tea bag. That's one thing. So that will be a system-driven thing. You need to have a mechanism to control it. Agreed. But what happens if somebody purposely try to do it, right? So somebody say, okay, competitor or somebody like try to purposely do it. Or maybe a chemical contamination. They can do that. So they need to have a mechanism. We call it threat assessment. So depend on your product, organization need to do a threat assessment. So now, like we up to now, we only talk about the technical food safety part. But from beyond this point, we are trying to become a like kind of a CIA, FBI agent because we try to see the security loophole. Imagine when your factory closed down, right? And then is there any possibility somebody can get into the factory and do this? Or maybe if somebody can send a person and he can do that. So we need to do a security risk assessment, right? Identify like, so what is your security? Now, say for example, if you like, you can go for HACCP ISO certification if you don't have like, proper demarcation. But if you want to go for a FSSC or PRC, you need to have a, like, the fence, the wall, and you need to have a security guard. All has to be there. And then not only that, we need to have a CCTV camera. Normally, we keep CCTV camera to just to see what is happening in the factory, or maybe to see whether people are sleeping or not. Right, but now under threat assessment, we might need to have a camera just focusing on the final packing point. Why? Those are the vulnerable points. Right, so this is vulnerability, bioterrorism. So it's not the system-driven hazard, right? Two different things. HACCP is actually talking about the system-driven hazard, but we call vulnerability assessment, threat assessment, somebody purposely try to do. Right. So this can be knowingly or unknowingly. Say, for example, somebody try to do some adulteration purposely. So try to get some benefit. Right. Even like, some people try to add water to the raw material. So you can get some financial benefit because you are paid by the weight. So that's the advantage you are getting. Right. But some people like, it can be purposely, sometimes like accidentally. But what happens if this water has a contamination? Microbes or maybe a chemical contamination. So that's the issue. Like, tea, you can see, I mean, there was even those things were in the news as well. Use like, sugar solution, like, to get the more black color. So that's the adulteration, purposeful adulteration. So these are the things which the under GMP they require for like, this vulnerability assessment. So this is very like, is a total different area. Vulnerability. Say for example, if you're buying product from particular country, so we need to know whether this country is capable, like, country's history about the vulnerability and threat assessment. Right. So this depend on that. And if you have all your raw material suppliers, you need to do this vulnerability assessment because sometimes you are not getting raw material from the direct manufacturer. You are getting raw material from like, the agent. So agent must be doing adulteration. So that's again a vulnerability. So you need to know all this information. So imagine food safety is not easy as like what you think previously. It's not only theoretical subject, it's a practical subject. So now basic, not only on the basic GMP requirement, now you need to talk about the food defense is being the bioterrorism part, the vulnerability and the threat assessment. So that is a total new area. So let me go back to the first few slide. We covered all this stuff. So under PS 2000, 2009 and 2025, the GMP PRP requirement. We complete the construction, we complete the utilities, water, air and all, waste disposal, equipment suitability, maintenance, cleaning, pest control. You have now, initially when we go through this, like, you look like kind of a open for these areas, but now you know like in and out about this. Personal hygiene, we did a lot of areas, we did case studies, product information and consumer awareness, rework, product recall, warehousing, product transport, purchase and supplies. And not only that, we basically covered the vulnerability and threat assessment. Like, I gave a basic idea about it. Right. So that is it from my end. I need to cover the GMP requirement, PRP requirement as per TS 22000 standard. And now, if you have any questions, now this is the time you can ask those questions. Even after the program, if you need any question, feedbacks, you can ask that. Uh, so, uh, but now if you have any question, any concern, you can ask this. Look like there's no question. So let me hand over to the the organizing team to wind up the program. So thank you very much for inviting me, and then for all the participants from my end. Thank you, engaging and throughout the day, your engagement. Back to the organizing team.
Thank you, sir. I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to each one of you for joining us today and actively participating in our certification one-day training workshop and engagement have made this session truly productive and insightful. We would like to express our heartfelt appreciation to our resource person, Mr. Rasitha Niroshana, for sharing his vast expertise and experience in good manufacturing practices with us. Your valuable insights and practical examples have undoubtedly enriched our understanding of GMP and its applications. We also extend our thanks to Mr. Shehan Josh for and contributing to the success of this workshop. To all participants, we hope that the knowledge and skills you have gained today will be a valuable asset in your academic and professional pursuits. We encourage you to apply these learnings in your respective fields and continue to strive for excellence in quality management and compliance. Once again, thank you all for your participation and we wish you continued success in your endeavors. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.